human rights. Okay. I think this theme is the concluding part of the law and ethics aspect in this particular curriculum. Okay. Before we start delving into the issue of human rights, one important development I think we need to share. Globally, health as a human right has triggered many a kind of debates, particularly in our context also. Now, many people started focusing on this particular emergence of health as a human right. There are various causative factors for this kind of debate in this country, various causative factors. One important indicator for this emergence of the debate is the basic framework of human rights. If you look into, there are 5 facets: civil, political, social, economical and cultural. These are the 5 facets of human rights if you look into. There are so many international documents, covenants, instruments which have declared and reiterated almost all these facets of human rights. For instance, Universal Declaration of Human Rights 1945, which is considered to be the fundamental international document which declares and affirms the human rights for all the human beings, followed by various documents, civil and political rights, and the latest in the global level is European Convention of Human Rights, ECHR, which played a very, very significant role. Even the countries where the human rights law was unthinkable, for instance, a country like UK, human rights law has come into being, and now various aspects are being considered in consonance with the European Convention of Human Rights. In that way, you take either a South African constitution or Sri Lankan constitution, Australian, New Zealand, Indian, individual country based constitutional laws also, they echo the concern for human rights. In that way, at a broader level, all these 5 facets have been recognized long ago. But if you trace the historical framework, if you look into, the main emphasis was more on civil and political rights. It was with regard to the birth of an institution called democracy has given rise to these kind of debates. When we talk about civil and political rights means, for instance, right to liberty, right to freedoms, right to protest, right to dissent. These are all political facets of a human being rights. For about 50 to 60 years, many people concentrated on the governance oriented civil and political rights. And that is the reason why even in this country also, pre-independent struggle, post-independent struggle, even for the last so many years, you look into the Supreme Court directives, the clarifications about what are the various political rights, liberty oriented, Article 21 of the Constitution of India. Similarly, social and economic rights also people started realizing. This is something very important. And that's where, apart from various human rights, health has acquired a very, very important focus. In fact, we have reached a stage where when we talk about the entire global debate on human rights, there are 2 quarters of thinking. One quarter which mainly focuses on civil and political rights. Another quarter, social, economic and cultural rights. And throughout the history, the social and economic cultural rights received the second hand treatment in terms of the priority. Many people felt that it is the individual vis-a-vis the establishment that is more important for a human being's liberty rather than an individual health. If the person doesn't have the freedom, what kind of health is a human right you are talking? Therefore, the person must acquire the freedom from the shackles of power, from the oppression, from the establishment oriented oppressive policies, procedures and implementation of laws. Therefore, for example, the related to detention, arrest, the kind of fair trial, almost all these human rights have reached a kind of global understanding and got reflected in individual countries' constitution. For instance, no person should be arbitrarily subjected to any kind of criminal prosecution. This is a human right, but it is reflected in every country's constitution. Article 21 and Article 22 of the Constitution of India, they speak about. In that way, for a major portion of time, the entire debate was on civil and political. But then people started realizing, no doubt you got liberty, you got your own civil right, you got your own political right. But within the country governance, the establishment vis-a-vis individual, people started realizing liberty alone is not adequate. Something else needs to be done. That's where the governance and the governed. That's focus, I mean, it has received a phenomenal interpretation and analysis. I hope you recall, particularly when Professor Amartya Sen gave K. Sanjvi's VHA, Voluntary Health Association lecture in Chennai. Dr. Amartya Sen has interpreted the entire ambit of why health is to be construed as a human right. In fact, it is available on the net. If possible, you kindly go through that and read the kind of interpretation Dr. Amartya Sen provides. And he says in unequivocal terms, in terms of social, economic development, in terms of human index as a development, the most important facet is the health of the individual. Unless the health of the individual is protected and promoted, what kind of economic development you can expect? That's where the importance has become as the foundational interpretation of health to be construed as a human right. And therefore, he said, in a developing economy like India, the utmost priority must be given to education and health care. I mean, that's the kind of message Dr. Amartya Sen. I mean, that is nothing but a kind of echoing concern from various quarters as to why health is to be construed as a human right and what actually is the impact on an individual independent economy. And ultimately, you remember, we in the earlier classes we discussed whether there is a right to life includes right to die. You remember? The Supreme Court came out with a finding, if you allow that, the meaning of right to life itself gets disintegrated, itself disappears, because right to life is the fundamental right from which other freedoms flow from. Similarly, social and economic rights also, the most important thing is the person must be healthy. In fact, not only the economic development in terms of individual or society at a a person, unless he or she is healthy, he cannot take care about a person who requires some kind of healthcare service. In that way, people started giving lot of emphasis, and I can tell you various conferences, various declarations have promulgated, and many people, particularly the non-governmental sector, played a very, very key role in tuning and firming up the debate that health is a necessary facet of human right. When compared to all other social and economic, cultural, health is the foundation. That is how many people started realizing the two kind of ideological, I wouldn't say divide, but a kind of deviation, that is civil and political, social, economic, cultural. People started talking about, can we not merge them both? In fact, Amar Jesani wrote a small piece. In fact, he mainly focused on, can we not bridge the ideological deviation and come out with a upfront stand protecting and promoting both civil and political and economic rights, social and economic rights. I mean, that's where the simple issue has come. The issue which attracts both the ideologies is health of a prisoner. A prisoner, the main focus is of civil and political rights, the kind of treatment, the kind of work, the kind of longevity, fair trial, procedures, etc., civil and political human rights. But it is also necessary, a prisoner must be provided with health. In such a case, health means social and economic. In that way, many people started realizing there are areas where ideological divide can be bridged. And now the dialogue is going on, and that's the reason why in future, please remember, when we talk about health as a human right, it is not necessarily be construed as a foundation for social human right, but also almost all the human rights, the basic ingredient is health of an individual. I mean, I think that way in future the entire dialogue is going to direct itself and getting lot of support from various votaries of this particular debate. Now, when we talk about health, I want to a kind of terminological clarification I want to tell you. That is the reason why if you visit World Health Organization website on health and healthcare, the very interesting debate you will find. Health, what do we mean when we say health? And accordingly it says health is to be distinguished from health care. In such a case, health care, what are the various facets? What are the various repercussions? Everything. Because the usage of word health, terminological, one need to be very clear. Then you may ask, what almost all these international documents, declarations, what kind of definition they give? Have you read any of those documents, human rights documents, like Universal Declaration of Human Rights, with one of the basic document, UDHR, 1945. If you look into, there is a particular class which deals with right to health. And health is defined as, in one sentence, please remember, and I want you to follow very clearly, because the ambit and reach of this health as a human right takes within its fold various other related rights. Okay? It says every person has a right to attain highest standard of both physical and mental health. Physical and mental health, highest attainable standard. That's how it defines UDHR. Then people started asking, what is this meaning? Highest attainable standard of physical and mental health means what? Then they have explained various facets. For instance, potable drinking water is a very important facet of health. Unadulterated food, your environment, air, the kind of workplace health hazards, particularly for women, children. In that way, almost all components, if you look into, host of rights, they come under health as a human right. For instance, if a person doesn't have access to a potable drinking water, definitely it is a violation of a human right. Similarly, clean food is not available. When Professor Muhammad Yunus got Nobel Prize, many people wondered how a banker got Nobel Prize for peace. How a person doing that kind of work is eligible for Nobel Prize for peace. In fact, you must read the Nobel Committee's declaration to understand that. Whenever a person is nominated and given an award, they give a citation. For particular disciplines are there. Okay. In that discipline, suppose a person is given economics, they will write, this is what he has done, and Nobel Committee has recognized that work. Similarly, Nobel Prize for Peace. You know, in that declaration, I have read, it says very clearly, for the kind of peace and tranquility what we target as a very important social goal, the most important thing which threatens that kind of peace is poverty. Poverty is anathema to the peaceful coexistence. Please remember. That's why when he said unrest, I think that's how it's to be understood. And for the first time, in fact, Professor Yunus, had he been given economics Nobel Prize, people would have appreciated. But he did not get for economics. He got it for peace. Because people felt that the kind of microcredit, the system which enables an individual to look after, to take care his own economic requirement. The economic independence is fundamental for a peaceful existence of an individual. If the number increases, the community is at peace because they do not have the concern for poverty. I mean, this is something a very, very important internationally. Many people started realizing that unless and until you take note of the kind of economic prosperity you want to achieve, the individual must be healthy, which means governance, the people in the state, the people in the power have phenomenal obligations in order to provide and render that the individual rights are respected and promoted. That is how right to health is not, please remember, a single instance indicating a doctor or hospital or facility or a drug, etc. That comes under health care. When we talk about health, I am sure you are aware, we have promotive aspects and we have preventive aspects and we have curative aspects. Health takes within its fold all the three, and even fourth one, rehabilitative or reformative aspects. Health, if it takes all the four, naturally the most important preventive and promotive aspects are providing hygienic environment, hygienic food, and the kind of potable drinking water. All these facets are preventive and promotive. I am sure you know the disease pattern in this country. What is the percentage of public health as a measured disease, non-availability of a drinking water, what kind of diseases are that led to? Similarly, the incidence and emergence of not only HIV/AIDS, many people say HIV/AIDS is definitely a social concern, but hepatitis, if you look into different forms of hepatitis, that is equally life-threatening situation, which can be easily related to the consumable drinking water, the quality of food what you eat. Similarly, various, now the scientific investigation, they have started revealing the nexus between the kind of air you breathe in, the kind of food you eat, the kind of water you drink, and the possible health hazard. In that way, people started realizing that unless the governance takes the utmost, gives utmost priority to almost all these facets, in terms of declaration, in terms of affirmation, now we have reached a stage where we understand when we say what is right to health. But the most important question mark is how to make these standards work in reality. That has become a major problem. If you look into in this country, I will give an example. Yesterday's newspaper, again I am sorry I am referring newspaper, please don't get angry. Yesterday's newspaper